When a massive anaconda wrapped its deadly coils around a helpless baby lion, every rule of the African wilderness said the story was over. But what happened next shattered everything scientists thought they knew about natural enemies. A silverback gorilla witnessed the attack, and what the lion pride did in response will make you question everything you believe about survival, loyalty, and the hidden bonds that connect all living things. The morning mist clung to the dense canopy of the Mboko River Basin.
Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you.
Deep in the heart of the Democratic Republic of Congo, ancient mahogany trees stretched toward the heavens, their massive trunks draped in emerald vines that had witnessed centuries of life and death in this untamed wilderness. The air was thick with humidity and the symphony of the rainforest. Chattering monkeys, exotic bird calls, and the distant rumble of rushing water cascading over moss-covered rocks. This was one of Africa's last pristine sanctuaries, where the boundaries between different territories blurred and unlikely encounters shaped the very essence of survival. The Mboko was a place where mountain gorillas descended from their highland homes to drink alongside river lions who had adapted to the forest's edge, creating a unique ecosystem found nowhere else on Earth. Shafts of golden sunlight pierced through the emerald cathedral above, illuminating droplets of dew that sparkled like diamonds on broad jungle leaves. The morning air carried the rich scent of wet earth, blooming orchids, and the musky presence of countless creatures beginning their daily dance of existence. But beneath this serene beauty, the forest held its breath. Something extraordinary was about to unfold. A moment so shocking that it would challenge every law of nature that wildlife experts had ever documented. In this verdant paradise where predator and prey lived by ancient codes, a single act of unthinkable courage was about to rewrite the rules of the wild forever. The stage was set for a drama that would prove some bonds transcend even the most primal instincts. The morning mist clung to the dense canopy of the Mboko River Basin, deep in the heart of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Ancient mahogany trees stretched toward the heavens, their massive trunks draped in emerald vines that had witnessed centuries of life and death in this untamed wilderness. The air was thick with humidity and the symphony of the rainforest, chattering monkeys, exotic bird calls, and the distant rumble of rushing water cascading over moss-covered rocks. This was one of Africa's last pristine sanctuaries, where the boundaries between different territories blurred, and unlikely encounters shaped the very essence of survival. The Mboko was a place where mountain gorillas descended from their highland homes to drink alongside river lions who had adapted to the forest's edge, creating a unique ecosystem found nowhere else on Earth. Shafts of golden sunlight pierced through the emerald cathedral above, illuminating droplets of dew that sparkled like diamonds on broad jungle leaves. The morning air carried the rich scent of wet earth, blooming orchids, and the musky presence of countless creatures beginning their daily dance of existence. But beneath the serene beauty, the forest held its breath. Something extraordinary was about to unfold, a moment so shocking that it would challenge every law of nature that wildlife experts had ever documented. In this verdant paradise, where predator and prey lived by ancient codes, a single act of unthinkable courage was about to rewrite the rules of the wild forever. The stage was set for a drama that would prove some bonds transcend even the most primal instincts. The morning tranquility shattered when a piercing shriek echoed through the forest canopy. Kesia's head snapped up from her field notes as the sound of terror cut through the peaceful jungle symphony like a blade. It was a sound she had never heard before, high-pitched, desperate, and filled with mortal fear. Through her binoculars, she spotted the source of the commotion near the riverbank. A baby lion, no more than 6 months old, had wandered too close to the water's edge, while its pride rested in the dappled shade nearby. The cub's golden fur was still fluffy with youth, its movements clumsy and innocent, as it pawed curiously at something glistening in the shallow water. But that something was moving. What the cub had mistaken for a fallen log was actually a massive green anaconda, easily 20 feet long and thick as a tree trunk. The serpent's prehistoric eyes fixed on the small predator with cold calculation. In one lightning-fast strike, the anaconda's powerful coils erupted from the water, wrapping around the helpless cub with terrifying precision. The baby lion's desperate cries pierced the air, as the snake's muscular body began its deadly embrace. Each coil tightened methodically, cutting off the cub's air supply while its tiny claws scratched uselessly against the anaconda's armored scales. The serpent's head swayed hypnotically as it adjusted its grip, preparing to crush the life from its young victim. Cassia's training kicked in immediately. As a wildlife researcher, she knew the iron rule of non-interference: never disrupt the natural order, no matter how heartbreaking the scene. Predation was a fundamental part of the ecosystem, and human intervention could have devastating consequences for the delicate balance of nature. Her hands trembled as she raised her camera to document what appeared to be a rare interspecies predation event. But even as her scientific mind cataloged the details, her heart ached, watching the innocent cub fight for its life against an opponent it had no chance of defeating. But as Cassia focused her lens on the unfolding tragedy, movement in her peripheral vision made her freeze. Django, the massive silverback she had been following, had stopped dead in his tracks. His enormous frame went rigid as his dark eyes locked onto the scene at the riverbank. The gentle giant, who usually moved with calm deliberation, was suddenly alert, every muscle in his 400-pound body tense with focus. What happened next defied everything Kesha understood about gorilla behavior. Instead of leading his family away from the dangerous predator as any sensible silverback would do, Django began moving deliberately toward the anaconda and its victim. His massive knuckles pressed into the soft earth as he approached with surprising stealth for such a large creature. Cassia's breath caught in her throat as she realized what she was witnessing. Django wasn't just curious. He was positioning himself strategically, using the thick vegetation as cover while keeping his eyes fixed on the struggling cub. This was calculated behavior, the kind of tactical thinking she had only seen gorillas display when protecting their own offspring. But this wasn't his offspring. This wasn't even his species. Through her research, Cassia knew that gorillas and lions inhabited completely separate worlds in this ecosystem. Gorillas were peaceful vegetarians who avoided conflict whenever possible, while lions were apex predators with whom they shared no natural alliance. There were no documented cases of interspecies cooperation between these two vastly different animals. Yet here was Django, a creature whose DNA was programmed for self-preservation and protection of his own kind, putting himself at risk for a baby lion. Anacondas were formidable predators capable of crushing animals far larger than gorillas. Any rational gorilla would retreat to safety. The most disturbing part was the look in Django's eyes. Cassia had studied gorilla expressions for years, and what she saw wasn't mere curiosity or territorial concern. It was something that chilled her to the bone: recognition, empathy, and something that looked disturbingly like moral outrage. Cassia found herself caught in an impossible position as she watched Django's deliberate approach toward the deadly scene. Every fiber of her scientific training screamed at her to remain neutral, to document rather than interfere. She had taken an oath as a researcher to observe nature without human intervention, understanding that even well-intentioned actions could disrupt delicate ecological balances. But this situation was unlike anything in her textbooks or training. Django was making a choice that could cost him his life and potentially endanger his entire family, who remained nervously clustered behind him. The other gorillas sensed the tension, their soft grunts and chest beats revealing their anxiety as their leader ventured toward unknown danger. Cassia's hands shook as she gripped her radio. She could call the ranger station, request immediate intervention to save both the cub and prevent Django from making a potentially fatal mistake. It would be the safe choice, the human choice, to impose order on chaos and prevent what could become a triple tragedy. Yet something held her back. In Django's measured movements, she recognized a kind of intelligence and purpose that demanded respect. This wasn't reckless behavior or simple animal instinct. The silverback was making a conscious decision based on information and emotions she couldn't fully comprehend. The baby lion's cries grew weaker as the anaconda's coils tightened. Time was running out. Meanwhile, the adult lions remained motionless in the shade, either unaware of their cub's predicament or resigned to the harsh realities of jungle life. Only Django seemed to grasp the moral weight of the moment. Cassia faced her own moment of truth. Should she trust in the ancient wisdom of the forest and allow whatever was about to unfold to happen naturally? Or should she impose human judgment, on a situation that transcended her understanding of the natural world.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
As she wrestled with this impossible choice, Django continued his steady advance, his massive form moving with purpose toward a confrontation that would challenge everything science thought it knew about animal consciousness and compassion. The forest seemed to hold its breath as Django reached the critical moment of decision. He crouched motionless behind a massive fern, his intelligent eyes calculating distances and risks with the precision of a military strategist. The baby lion's struggles were growing weaker, its tiny body going limp as the anaconda's relentless pressure began to win the battle for survival. Cassia could see the internal war raging within the silverback. His massive chest rose and fell with controlled breathing, every muscle coiled like a spring ready to release. Behind him, his family waited in terrified silence. The females clutched their own young closer, sensing that their protector was about to make a choice that could endanger them all. The anaconda, focused entirely on its prey, remained unaware of the 400-pound decision-maker watching from the shadows. Its prehistoric head swayed rhythmically as it adjusted its grip, preparing for the final squeeze that would end the cub's life. The serpent's cold efficiency was a reminder of nature's brutal mathematics. Survival belonged to the strongest, the fastest, the most ruthless. But in that moment, something extraordinary flickered in Django's dark eyes. It wasn't the calculated aggression of a territorial dispute or the protective fury of a parent defending offspring. It was something deeper, something that transcended species boundaries and evolutionary programming. The baby lion let out one final, barely audible whimper. That sound shattered whatever internal debate had paralyzed the silverback. Django's massive hands pressed into the earth as he shifted his weight forward, his jaw set with grim determination. The gentle giant, who had spent his life avoiding conflict, was about to charge headfirst into mortal danger for a creature that shared no blood, no history, no evolutionary alliance with his kind. Cassia's heart hammered against her ribs as she realized she was about to witness either the most heroic act in natural history or watch one of her beloved gorillas make the last mistake of his life. Time slowed to a crawl as Django gathered himself for what came next. What happened next defied every law of the natural world that Cassia thought she understood. Django didn't charge. Instead, he did something that made her question her own sanity. The massive silverback raised himself to his full height and began beating his chest, not with the aggressive fury of a gorilla displaying dominance, but with a specific rhythm. 3 slow, deliberate beats. Pause. 3 more beats. Pause. It was a pattern Cassia had never heard before, yet somehow it seemed intentional, almost like a signal. Then the impossible occurred. From the shadows where the adult lions had been resting, a low rumble began to build. Not the warning growl of threatened predators, but something else entirely. The pride leader, a magnificent male with a scarred muzzle, slowly rose to his feet. His golden eyes weren't fixed on Django as potential threat, but on the anaconda, crushing his offspring. But instead of charging to save his cub as any lion would do, the pride leader did something that shattered everything Keisha knew about animal behavior. He positioned himself directly between Django and the anaconda, then looked back at the silverback and nodded, actually nodded, as if acknowledging some ancient agreement between their species. What followed was the most extraordinary display of interspecies cooperation ever witnessed. The pride leader released a roar that wasn't meant to intimidate the gorilla, but to coordinate with him. Django responded with his own thunderous chest beat, and suddenly both species moved in perfect synchronization. The lions formed a semicircle around the anaconda while Django approached from behind. They weren't competing for the kill or establishing dominance. They were working together, using combined intelligence and strategy that transcended millions of years of evolutionary separation. Cassia's hands trembled as she raised her camera, knowing she was documenting something that would rewrite textbooks and challenge everything science believed about animal consciousness, communication, and the capacity for cross-species empathy. This wasn't just survival. This was collaboration at a level that suggested these animals shared something far deeper than territory or resources. The coordinated rescue unfolded with military precision that left Cassia speechless. Django approached the anaconda from its blind spot, while the pride leader positioned himself directly in the serpent's line of sight. The massive snake, sensing danger, began to shift its coils but refused to release its prize, a decision that would prove fatal to its hunting success. The pride leader feinted left, drawing the anaconda's attention and causing its head to sway defensively in that direction. At that exact moment, Django struck with surprising speed for such a massive creature. His powerful hands grabbed the snake's body just behind its head, using his incredible grip strength to prevent the anaconda from turning to bite him. But the real genius of their strategy became apparent in the next seconds. While Django held the serpent's head immobilized, two lionesses moved in from opposite sides, carefully positioning themselves near the coils wrapped around the dying cub. Instead of using their claws or teeth, which could have injured the baby lion, they used their combined body weight to push against the anaconda's coils, gradually loosening the deadly embrace. The anaconda, caught in this impossible situation, began to thrash violently. Its 20-foot body whipped through the air with enough force to shatter bones, but Django held firm, his massive muscles straining against the serpent's desperate attempts to break free. Foam appeared at the corners of his mouth from the tremendous effort, yet he never loosened his grip. Meanwhile, the lionesses worked with surgical precision, carefully unwrapping each coil from around the cub's tiny body. The baby lion, barely conscious but still breathing, was finally freed from its death trap. The moment the last coil released, the pride leader roared, a signal that sent the entire coordinated team scattering in different directions. Django released the anaconda and backed away rapidly while the lions retreated with the rescued cub. The confused and battered serpent, finding itself suddenly alone and outnumbered, slithered away into the river to nurse its wounds and seek easier prey elsewhere. In the stunned silence that followed, Cassia watched as the impossible rescue transformed into something even more extraordinary. The baby lion, weak but alive, struggled to its feet on shaking legs. Its golden fur was matted and damp, but its bright eyes showed the unmistakable spark of life that had nearly been extinguished forever. What happened next made Cassia question everything she thought she knew about animal emotion and gratitude. The pride leader approached Django slowly, his massive mane flowing in the gentle forest breeze. There was no aggression in his posture, no territorial display or dominance assertion. Instead, he moved with the careful respect reserved for equals. When he reached the silverback, he did something that no lion had ever been documented doing with a gorilla in the wild. He bowed his head. It was a brief gesture, lasting only seconds, but unmistakably deliberate. Django responded by gently touching his massive knuckles to the ground, the gorilla equivalent of acknowledgement and mutual respect. The two apex predators, representing completely different evolutionary paths, had found common ground in their shared commitment to protecting the innocent. The rescued cub, still unsteady but driven by instinct, wobbled toward its pride. But before rejoining its family, it did something that brought tears to Cassia's eyes. The tiny creature looked back at Django and released a soft mewing sound, not the cry of distress it had made earlier, but something that sounded remarkably like gratitude. Django's response was equally moving. The massive silverback, who could have crushed the cub with one careless movement, extended his enormous hand palm up in the gorilla gesture of peaceful offering. The baby lion, with innocent trust that transcended species boundaries, briefly touched its tiny paw to Django's palm. As the lions disappeared into the forest shadows with their rescued family member, Django rejoined his own troop. The other gorillas gathered around their leader, chattering softly as if discussing the extraordinary events they had witnessed. But Django remained quiet, his wise eyes gazing toward where the lions had vanished, perhaps understanding that he had participated in something far greater than a simple rescue. Manja. What Cassia witnessed that day in the Mboko River Basin changed everything she believed about consciousness, empathy, and the invisible threads that connect all living beings. The coordinated rescue wasn't just an anomaly in animal behavior, it was proof that compassion transcends the boundaries we think divide us. Scientists have long debated whether animals possess true empathy or merely act on instinct. But Django's choice to risk his life for a creature with whom he shared no evolutionary alliance revealed something profound about the nature of moral courage. He recognized suffering and chose to act, not because his genes programmed him to, but because something deeper called him to intervene. This lesson extends far beyond the forest. In our human world, We often retreat into the safety of our own tribes, our families, communities, nations, beliefs. We convince ourselves that our responsibility ends where our similarity ends. Yet the gorilla and lions demonstrated that the highest form of courage isn't protecting those who are like us, but extending compassion to those who are different. Every day we encounter opportunities to be Django, the colleague from a different background who needs support, the neighbor whose beliefs clash with ours but who faces genuine hardship, the stranger whose struggles we could ease with simple kindness. Too often, we rationalize our inaction by focusing on our differences rather than our shared capacity for both suffering and hope. The most remarkable aspect of the rescue wasn't the physical coordination between species, but the recognition that transcended millions of years of evolutionary separation. Django saw past the baby lion's species, its potential threat, its difference. He saw only a life worth saving. This recognition, this ability to see beyond the surface differences to the fundamental value of existence itself, represents the highest form of consciousness. It's the moment when survival of the fittest evolves into something greater. Survival through compassion. When we choose to extend our circle of care beyond the familiar and comfortable, we don't just save others, we discover the most powerful version of ourselves.
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.